I knew I was witnessing a slow-motion corporate disaster the moment Vincent, our new CMO with teeth so white they could bounce satellite signals, glanced at the quarterly strategy report I'd spent 6 weeks preparing, inhaled like he'd caught a whiff of spoiled milk, and declared, "This PowerPoint is nothing but fluff." Just like that, in front of my entire analytics team, I didn't know whether to laugh or start drafting his professional obituary in red ink. My name is Claire Donovan, and at 38, I'd built my reputation at North Shore Dynamics on one simple principle: data doesn't lie, but people do. As head of strategic analytics, I'd spent 7 years turning raw numbers into narratives that secured contracts worth hundreds of millions. Until that Tuesday morning, when Vincent Carr walked into conference room B like he owned the oxygen we were breathing. Vincent had that particular breed of confidence that comes from an MBA program where they teach you to speak in TED Talk sound bites. Fresh from some Silicon Valley unicorn that had imploded 6 months after his departure, a detail conveniently absent from his LinkedIn, he'd been hired as our new CMO with a mandate to revolutionize our client engagement paradigm. I should have known we were fucked the moment he used the word paradigm unironically in his introduction email. The meeting was supposed to be a routine quarterly strategy review. My team had assembled our usual comprehensive deck: market penetration analysis, client retention metrics, predictive modeling for Q3 and Q4. Real meat and potatoes stuff that our clients actually paid us to know. Sophie, my lead data visualization specialist, had even created these gorgeous interactive charts that made complex correlations look like art. Marin, our AI applications analyst, had run 3 different scenario models to stress test our recommendations. Vincent arrived 12 minutes late with a venti something or other that smelled like pumpkin spice and poor judgment. He didn't apologize. Instead, he perched on the edge of the conference table, not in a chair like a normal human being, and smiled that practice smile that probably worked wonders at networking events where nobody actually listened to each other. "Before we dive in," he said, using air quotes around dive in for reasons I still don't understand, "I want to level set expectations. I believe in disruptive thinking. In my experience, we spend too much time in the weeds when we should be focusing on the 30,000-foot view." Sophie caught my eye and mouthed bingo. We'd been playing buzzword bingo since Vincent's first all hands, and she'd just won. I pulled up the first slide. "Our analysis shows that sector-specific customization has increased client retention by 37% over the past 2 quarters. If we drill down into..." That's when it happened. The glance, the inhale, the pronouncement that would ultimately cost him everything. "This PowerPoint is nothing but fluff." The room went silent. Not the comfortable silence of people processing information, but the awkward, suffocating silence of secondhand embarrassment. Sophie's jaw literally dropped. Marin stopped typing mid-keystroke. "I'm sorry," I managed, though sorry was the last thing I felt. Vincent stood up, started pacing like he was delivering a keynote. "Look, Claire, I appreciate the effort, really. But clients don't want spreadsheets. They want vision. They want to be inspired. This," he waved dismissively at my screen, "this is just numbers. Where's the story? Where's the emotional hook?" "The story," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest, "is that our data-driven approach has maintained a 92% client satisfaction rate." "See, that's exactly what I mean. 92%? He laughed, actually laughed. "Nobody remembers percentages. They remember feelings. They remember transformational moments." I wanted to point out that our biggest client, Alderwave Systems, specifically chose us because we didn't deal in feelings and transformational moments. They chose us because when we said 92%, we could show them exactly how we calculated it, tested it, and validated it across multiple scenarios. But I held my tongue. Vincent turned to address my team directly, as if I'd suddenly become invisible. "From now on, I'll be handling all major client presentations. We need to pivot from this kind of analytical fluff to something with real impact. Something that sings." He left the room without looking at the remaining 63 slides, without asking a single question about methodology, without even pretending to care about the 6 weeks of 16-hour days my team had invested. Sophie was the first to speak after the door closed. Did he just call our work fluff and then say he wants something that sings? I think he did, Marin said, still staring at the door like Vincent might rematerialize to explain the joke. I closed my laptop slowly, deliberately. In 7 years at North Shore Dynamics, I'd weathered difficult clients, impossible deadlines, and 3 different CEOs. But I'd never encountered anyone who dismissed evidence-based strategy with such breathtaking arrogance. Team meeting in my office, I said. 5 minutes. As they filed out, I remained alone in conference room B for a moment, staring at the projection screen still displaying my fluff. Vincent Carr had no idea what he'd just started. He saw numbers where I saw patterns, he saw spreadsheets where I saw strategies, and most importantly, he saw weakness where he should have seen warning. The game was on, and Vincent didn't even know he was playing. Alderwave Systems wasn't just our biggest client, they were our proof of concept, our crown jewel. The $30 million validation that data-driven strategy could outperform flashy presentations every single time. I still remember the day 3 years ago when their RFP landed on my desk like a gauntlet thrown down. Transform their market intelligence operations or watch them hemorrhage another $50 million to inefficient targeting. Back then, Alderwave was bleeding money trying to be everything to everyone. Their previous consultants, one of those Big Four firms with more PowerPoint templates than actual insights, had convinced them to cast a wide net and leverage synergies across all verticals. Translation: throw money at the wall and see what sticks. Nothing stuck. I'd spent 4 months in their offices, living on conference room coffee and whatever sad desk salads I could grab between meetings. My team mapped every customer interaction, tracked every failed campaign, autopsied every lost deal. We didn't just find patterns, we found the ghost in their machine, a fundamental misalignment between what they thought their customers wanted and what those customers actually bought. The pilot program was brutal. Alderwave's board was skeptical, their sales team was hostile, and their CMO at the time treated me like I was personally attacking his legacy. But Lydia Torres, their CTO, saw something different. Where others saw disruption, she saw opportunity. Where others saw complexity, she saw elegance waiting to emerge. Lydia became more than a client. She became a mentor. She had this way of cutting through corporate bullshit with surgical precision. Data is a language, she told me once over whiskey at the hotel bar after a particularly grueling board presentation. Most people speak it like tourists, badly and loudly. You speak it like a native. She taught me the art of translation, how to turn statistical significance into strategic imperatives, how to make regression models tell stories that CEOs could understand. She kept this worn leather notebook, pages yellowed and coffee-stained, filled with observations that were half mathematics, half philosophy. Sometimes she'd slide it across the table during our working sessions, pointing to some cryptic note she'd made years ago that suddenly illuminated whatever problem we were tackling. Never show them all your cards. One entry read, "Let them think the magic is in the presentation, not the preparation." Another, "The most dangerous person in any boardroom is the one who knows exactly how much everyone else doesn't know." Under Lydia's guidance, the pilot program didn't just succeed, it redefined success. We increased Alderwave's conversion rate by 43% in 6 months. Their customer acquisition costs dropped by half. Their lifetime value calculations, which had been basically fiction before we arrived, became predictive models so accurate that their CFO called them borderline prophetic. The full contract followed naturally, $30 million over 3 years, with performance bonuses that my team had hit every single quarter. Alderwave became the case study every other potential client wanted to hear about. They were the reason North Shore could charge premium rates. They were the foundation of our reputation. And Lydia? She became the kind of client every consultant dreams of. One who understood that good strategy isn't about making noise, it's about making sense. We'd evolved from vendor and client to something more like co-conspirators, united in our belief that data, properly understood and applied, could cut through any amount of corporate theater. She'd even started sending me job offers, half joking at first, then increasingly serious. "You're wasted there," she'd say. "Come build something real with us." I'd always laughed it off, loyal to North Shore, to the team I'd built, to the work we were doing. But that was before Vincent Carr decided my work was fluff. That Tuesday evening, after Vincent's performance in Conference Room B, I sat in my office staring at the Alderwave account files. Their quarterly review was in 2 weeks. Vincent had already sent an email, copying me, of course, as if I were his assistant, informing Lydia that he would be personally handling their presentation to elevate the strategic conversation. He had no idea that Lydia Torres didn't care about elevated conversations. She cared about ground truth. She cared about models that could predict market shifts 3 quarters out. She cared about insights that could save or make millions, not about slides with animated transitions and inspirational quotes. I pulled out my phone and looked at Lydia's last text from a month ago. "Offer still stands. Triple the salary. Your own team. Full autonomy. Think about it." I hadn't thought about it then. But sitting there, watching Vincent's email announce his plans to replace my analytical approach with his vision-forward methodology, I wasn't just thinking about it, I was planning for it. I opened a new message to Lydia and typed 6 words. "How do you feel about fluff?" Her response came back in less than 30 seconds. "I prefer substance." "Why?" "You'll see in 2 weeks." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally. "Should I be worried?" "No." I typed back. "You should be ready." I locked my phone and turned back to my computer. Vincent wanted to handle the Alderwave presentation himself? Perfect. I'd give him exactly what he asked for, complete ownership of whatever happened next. After all, the most dangerous person in any boardroom is the one who knows exactly how much everyone else doesn't know. And Vincent Carr didn't know anything at all. The email arrived Thursday morning, written in that particular brand of corporate passive aggression that Vincent had perfected. "Team, after reviewing our upcoming commitments, I'll be taking point on the Alderwave quarterly review. Claire, I'll need you to attend as technical support. Someone needs to advance the slides while I present. Please prepare the clicker and ensure all animations render properly. Best, V. Technical support. Slide advancer. 7 years of relationship building, and I'd been reduced to pressing the space bar." Sophie read it over my shoulder, her face flushing red. "He can't be serious." "Oh, he's serious," I said, forwarding the email to my personal account for future documentation. "He's seriously underestimating Lydia Torres." That afternoon, Vincent summoned me to his office, a glass cube he'd somehow convinced facilities to construct in what used to be our quiet workspace. Everything inside was white and chrome, like an Apple store had vomited its aesthetic all over our perfectly functional office. He was standing at his standing desk, because of course he was, wearing AirPods during our meeting, because of course he was. "Claire." He removed one AirPod, a gesture I suppose was meant to convey partial attention. "Quick sync on Alderwave. I've been reviewing your historical presentations, and I have to say, they're very thorough." Thorough. The way he said it made it sound like a disease. "Lydia appreciates thorough," I said carefully. Right. But here's the thing. I've been doing some research on Alderwave's new board composition. 3 new members from consumer tech. These aren't data nerds, they're vision guys. They want to see innovation, disruption, transformation. He pulled up his laptop screen, showing me his new deck. My stomach turned. It was every PowerPoint sin made manifest. Gradient backgrounds, meaningless circular diagrams. Stock photos of people in suits pointing at invisible futures. Slide 3 had a word cloud. A fucking word cloud in 2025. "Where's the quarterly performance analysis?" I asked. "Page 47, appendix." If they want details, we can always circle back. But the main narrative needs to be about possibilities, not probabilities. Vincent, Lydia specifically requested. I know what clients think they want, he interrupted, replacing his AirPod. But part of leadership is showing them what they actually need. Trust me, I've done this before. Yes, I thought. And those companies no longer exist. That evening, I composed a very careful message to Lydia. Professional. Neutral. Just enough information without appearing vindictive. Lydia, quick heads up on Thursday's presentation. Vincent Carr will be leading the session with a new strategic approach. I'll be attending in a support capacity but won't be presenting the analytical components we discussed. The quantitative analysis has been moved to the appendix. Want to make sure your expectations are properly set. Best, Claire. I hesitated before hitting send. This was a delicate game. Too much warning and Vincent might catch wind. Too little and Lydia might not be prepared. But I knew Lydia. She could read between lines written in invisible ink. Her response came an hour later. Understood. We'll adjust attendee list accordingly. BTW, have you given more thought to our previous discussion? I stared at that last line. She was offering me a lifeboat. But I wasn't ready to abandon ship. Not yet. Not until Vincent had a chance to showcase his full incompetence. Still considering, I typed back. Let's see how Thursday goes. Indeed, I'm particularly interested in seeing this new strategic approach. Should be educational. Monday morning, Vincent called a prep meeting. He'd invited the entire marketing team, but not a single analyst. I only knew about it because Sophie overheard and texted me. I showed up anyway. Sliding into the back of the room, just as Vincent was explaining his breakthrough insight. Alderwave doesn't need data, he was saying. They need a narrative. They need to see themselves as the heroes of their own digital transformation journey. Someone from marketing raised a tentative hand. But don't they manufacture industrial sensors? Isn't their whole business model based on data accuracy? Vincent's smile tightened. That's thinking too literally. We're not selling sensors, we're selling sensing. We're selling the ability to feel the market's pulse. I actually bit my tongue. Literally bit it to keep from laughing. He noticed me then, his eyes narrowing. Claire, since you're here, why don't you tell the team about Lydia Torres? What makes her tick? It was a test. He wanted me to validate his approach in front of witnesses. I stood slowly. Lydia Torres has a PhD in applied mathematics from MIT. She's published 12 papers on predictive modeling. She keeps a notebook of statistical proofs she finds elegant. Last year, she fired a vendor for using correlation-causation fallacies in their proposal. The room went quiet. What makes her tick? I continued. Precision, accuracy, truth. She once told me that the only thing worse than being wrong is being vaguely right. Vincent's face had gone pale. Well, that's one perspective. It's not a perspective, I said, gathering my things. It's data. As I left, I heard him telling the team not to worry, that technical people always resist innovation at first. I pulled out my phone and sent one more text to Lydia. Bringing my leather notebook Thursday. You'll want to take notes. Her response was just an emoji. Black pawn. She understood. The pieces were all in position. Vincent was about to learn that in chess, the most devastating attacks are the ones you never see coming, and he'd already told me I wouldn't be speaking at the presentation. Perfect. The best checkmate is always a silent one. The Alderwave building stood like a glass knife against the Seattle skyline, 30 floors of steel and ambition. Thursday arrived gray and drizzling, the kind of Pacific Northwest morning that made everything feel consequential. Vincent had insisted we take separate cars. Better for our carbon footprint if we don't all arrive together, he'd said, though I knew he just wanted to make an entrance without me. Their boardroom occupied the entire 28th floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows that made you feel like you were floating above the city. I arrived 15 minutes early, setting up the laptop and checking the display connections with the methodical precision of someone preparing a gallows. Vincent's deck was loaded, all 63 slides of it, including the animations he'd insisted on. Bars that grew like seedlings, pie charts that spun like roulette wheels. The room began filling at 9:45. I recognized most faces. David Kim from Strategic Initiatives, Sarah Brennan from Operations, Marcus Wells from Finance. Then the new board members Vincent had mentioned. 3 Silicon Valley types who looked like they'd stepped out of a Patagonia catalog. They carried sustainable water bottles and checked Apple Watches with practiced disinterest. Lydia entered last, and the room's energy shifted. She wore her authority like a tailored suit, understated but impossible to ignore. Her eyes found mine for a fraction of a second, and I saw something there. Anticipation, amusement. She took her seat at the head of the table and opened her leather notebook. Not the old one I knew, but a new one. Its pages pristine and waiting. Vincent burst in at 10:03, apologizing profusely about traffic while somehow making it sound like the city's fault for poor urban planning. He was wearing a new suit, something expensive and slightly too fashion-forward for Seattle. His teeth had been freshly whitened. I could tell because he kept smiling at his own reflection in the conference room glass. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, clicking to his title slide, "Sensing the Future, a paradigm shift in strategic evolution. Today isn't about where Alderwave has been. It's about where Alderwave is going." The first 10 minutes were word salad, synergy, disruption, paradigm shifts, revolutionary pivots. He had this way of gesturing that made it seem like he was physically pulling insights from the air. The new board members nodded along, probably out of politeness or confusion. It was hard to tell which. Slide 23 was where things started to unravel. A graph showing projected market growth that swept upward in an exponential curve that would make any mathematician weep. "These projections," Lydia interrupted, her voice cutting through Vincent's momentum like a scalpel. "What's the statistical confidence interval?" Vincent's smile flickered. "We're 90% confident in the direction." "The direction?" Lydia's pen hadn't moved. "Not the magnitude?" "Well, the exact numbers are less important than the trend." "The exact numbers," Marcus Wells interjected, "determine whether we invest 30 million or 300 million. So they're somewhat important." Vincent clicked forward quickly. Too quickly. He'd skipped his transition slides and landed on something titled Emotional Resonance Mapping, a slide that was literally just colored bubbles with feelings written inside them. Joy, anticipation, trust. Sarah Brennan actually laughed. Not a polite chuckle, but a genuine bark of disbelief. Are we supposed to invest in feelings? It's about connecting with the human element of data. Vincent scrambled, clicking again. Another skip. Now we were looking at a slide that just said, "Imagine," in 72-point font. "Imagine what?" Lydia asked. Her voice was dangerously quiet. Vincent was sweating now. I could see it beating at his hairline, threatening his carefully styled coif. "Imagine the possibilities when we stop being constrained by traditional metrics." "You mean the metrics that have generated 400% ROI over 3 years? David Kim pulled up something on his tablet. "The metrics Claire Donovan's team developed?" Vincent's eyes flicked to me, accusatory, as if I'd somehow orchestrated this ambush. I kept my expression neutral, my hands steady on the laptop trackpad. "Claire's work was foundational," Vincent managed. "But we need to evolve beyond mere measurement." "Show me the data," Lydia said. "The data?" "The analysis, the models, the actual substance behind these curves and bubbles, and feelings." Vincent clicked frantically, searching for the appendix. Slide after slide of meaningless graphics flew by. Stock photos of handshakes. A picture of a sunrise over mountains with the word excellence superimposed. He'd buried the actual analysis so deep in his deck that he couldn't even find it. "It's slide 47, I said quietly. The room turned to look at me. "The data analysis," I clarified. "It's on slide 47. Would you like me to navigate there?" Vincent's face had gone from red to something approaching purple. Yes, please. Navigate there. I clicked once. The slide that appeared was my original analysis, but Vincent had compressed it to fit on one page, making the fonts so small they were unreadable from more than 3 feet away. He'd also, I noticed with grim satisfaction, somehow corrupted the formulas so that half the cells showed error messages. Lydia stood up. The room went silent. Mr. Carr, she said, and the Mr. felt like a demotion. This is unacceptable. This isn't a presentation. It's a TED Talk fever dream. You've taken 3 years of successful partnership and reduced it to motivational poster slogans. She pulled out her phone and typed something quickly. I'm calling a recess. Mr. Carr, I suggest you use this time to consider whether you have anything of actual substance to present. Claire, could you stay behind for a moment? The room emptied like someone had pulled a fire alarm. Vincent lingered, trying to make eye contact with me, perhaps hoping for some sign of solidarity. I gave him nothing. He left, his expensive shoes clicking defeat against the marble floor. When we were alone, Lydia looked at me and smiled, the kind of smile a chess master gives when their opponent has just moved exactly where they wanted them to. So, she said, pulling out her phone to show me a text she'd already typed but hadn't sent, pulling the contract, effective immediately. This is what Fluff looks like? She asked. Apparently. She deleted the draft and typed something else. Lunch tomorrow, Le Bernardin. We have an offer to discuss. She showed me the screen, her finger hovering over the send button. Unless you have any objections. I thought about Vincent, probably in the bathroom right now, trying to figure out how to salvage the unsalvageable. I thought about my team. Who deserved better than being dismissed as producers of Fluff? I thought about 3 years of building something real, something valuable, something that actually mattered. Send it, I said. She did. Then she added, bring Sophie and Marin if they're interested. I have a feeling we're going to need people who understand the difference between data and decoration. The checkmate was almost complete. Vincent just didn't know he was already in check. Le Bernardin didn't take lunch reservations for the next 3 months, unless you were Lydia Torres. We sat at a corner table with a view of the rain-slicked Manhattan streets, the kind of table where 8-figure deals were dissected over $30 salads. She'd ordered a bottle of Sancerre before I arrived, a signal that this wasn't just lunch, it was a celebration of something that hadn't happened yet. Vincent called me 6 times last night, she said, swirling her wine with the casual indifference of someone deleting voicemails without listening. Even tried to connect on LinkedIn at 2 a.m. Desperate doesn't begin to describe it. What did he want? A second chance, claimed there were technical difficulties with the presentation, that you had somehow sabotaged the deck. She smiled. Interesting theory, considering you never touched the content. I took a sip of wine, letting it sit on my tongue for a moment. I only told him where to find his own slides. Exactly. Lydia pulled out her new leather notebook, flipping to a page already filled with her precise handwriting. Here's what I'm thinking. Alderwave is building a new division, predictive intelligence. We need someone who understands that intelligence isn't about pretty pictures. It's about seeing patterns before they become trends, identifying problems before they become crises. She slid the notebook across the table. The number at the bottom of the page had so many zeros I had to count them twice. That's base salary, she continued, plus equity, plus a signing bonus that should adequately compensate you for the bullshit you've endured. You build your own team, report directly to me, and never have to advance anyone else's slides again. Triple my current salary, I said, remembering her earlier promise. Actually, it's 3.4 times, but who's counting? She flagged the waiter for another bottle. I know you, Claire. You're loyal. You think leaving North Shore would be betraying something. But let me ask you this. What exactly are you being loyal to? A company that let Vincent Carr call your work fluff? A leadership team that chose style over substance? She was right. Of course. My loyalty was to something that no longer existed, if it ever had. I want Sophie and Marin, I said. Done. And I want to bring the Alderwave account with us. Lydia laughed, a genuine sound that turned heads at nearby tables. Claire, I am the Alderwave account. The contract with North Shore dies the moment you say yes. Legal's already drawn up the termination notice. Cause, failure to meet deliverable standards as outlined in Section 7.3 of our service agreement. The Vincent Carr Memorial Clause? We're calling it Material Breach of Performance Standards. But yes, essentially the You Hired an Idiot clause. The main courses arrived, Dover sole for her, salmon for me, but I barely tasted anything. My mind was running scenarios, calculating probabilities, weighing outcomes. This wasn't just changing jobs, this was declaring war. Vincent will try to blame me, I said. Let him. I've already had lunch with your CEO, golf buddy of mine, actually. Showed him the presentation deck. All 63 slides of animated nonsense. Richard nearly choked on his martini when he saw the feelings bubbles. She pulled out her phone, showing me a text from Richard Steinberg, North Shore's CEO. WTF did Carr do? Call me ASAP. You've been planning this, I said. Since the moment Vincent called your work Fluff, you think you're the only one who's been watching? Claire, half of Silicon Valley knows your team is the only reason North Shore hasn't imploded. The other half is waiting to poach you the moment you become available. Then why didn't they? Because you weren't ready to leave. You had to see for yourself that competence isn't always rewarded. That sometimes the Vincent Carrs of the world fail upward until someone like you decides enough is enough. She refilled our glasses. So, enough. I thought about my team that morning. Sophie stress eating her way through a family-sized bag of chips while trying to make sense of Vincent's latest strategic pivot. Marin running models that Vincent would never look at, let alone understand. My entire department reduced to supporting actors in Vincent's one-man show about nothing. I need to know they're protected, I said. Sophie and Marin. If they come with me, Vincent might retaliate against anyone left behind. Already handled, part of the contract termination includes a transition period. North Shore will need to maintain your team for at least 6 months to manage other accounts. By then, Vincent will be someone else's problem. If he lasts that long, you've thought of everything. No, Lydia corrected. You taught me to think of everything 3 years ago, when you mapped out 17 different scenario models for our market entry. You taught me that the best strategy isn't just knowing what will happen, but knowing what could happen and being ready for all of it. She raised her glass. So, Claire Donovan, are you ready to stop advancing other people's slides? I thought about Vincent, probably in his glass office right now, trying to figure out how to spin yesterday's disaster into someone else's fault. I thought about every time he'd dismissed data as just numbers, every time he'd chosen flash over substance, every time he demonstrated that confidence without competence wasn't just annoying, it was dangerous. I'll need 2 weeks to transition. You'll submit your resignation Monday morning, clean break, no transition. North Shore made their choice when they hired Vincent. They can live with the consequences. That seems cruel? No. That's business. The same business that let Vincent humiliate you in front of your team. The same business that reduced you to his personal slide advancer. Her voice softened slightly. Claire, you don't owe them your guilt. You don't owe them anything. She was right. Again. Monday morning, I agreed. Excellent. Now, let's discuss Sophie and Marin. I'm thinking we offer them 70% increases to start. 100%, I countered. They're worth it. Lydia smiled. This is why you're going to be dangerous in the right position. You understand that talent isn't an expense, it's an investment. We spent the rest of lunch planning the new division, sketching out organizational structures on napkins, discussing the kind of work we could do when bureaucracy and ego weren't constantly in the way. By the time we finished, the rain had stopped and Manhattan gleamed under weak afternoon sun. As we waited for our cars, Lydia handed me a new leather notebook. Similar to hers, but unused, pristine. For your next chapter, she said. Page 1. Write this down. The best revenge isn't emotional, it's mathematical. It's inevitable. It's already in motion before your opponent realizes the game has begun. I opened the notebook, running my fingers across the blank pages. Lydia, why are you really doing this? She considered the question. Because Vincent Carr represents everything wrong with corporate America. Style over substance, sizzle over steak. And because watching mediocre men fail upward while brilliant women clean up their messes makes me physically ill. She paused. Also, because stealing you from North Shore is going to make Richard's quarter look disastrous. And he still owes me 50 grand from our last poker game. Her car arrived first. Before getting in, she turned back. Monday morning, don't overthink it, don't feel guilty. Just send the email and walk away. The rest is just gravity taking its course. As her car disappeared into traffic, I stood there holding the notebook, feeling the weight of what was about to happen. Vincent thought he'd won by relegating me to the shadows. He had no idea that shadows were exactly where the most dangerous moves were made. Monday was going to be beautiful. Monday morning arrived with unusual sunshine, the kind that made Seattle feel like it was pretending to be California. I'd written my resignation email at 5 a.m., keeping it clinical. Effective immediately, I am resigning from my position at North Shore Dynamics to pursue other opportunities. Thank you for the experience, Claire Donovan. No explanations, no accusations, no bridges burned with gasoline and glee. Just facts. I hit send at 8:09 a.m. sharp, then forwarded it to my personal email for documentation. By 8:03, my phone was buzzing. Richard Steinberg calling. I let it go to voicemail. Then HR. Then Vincent. Of all people. All voicemail. Sophie was waiting in my office when I arrived, holding 2 cups of coffee like a peace offering. So, she said, the rumor mill says you had lunch with Lydia Torres on Friday. The rumor mill works fast. The rumor mill says Vincent spent the weekend creating a recovery strategy presentation, 120 slides about how to win back Alderwave. She set down 1 coffee, keeping the other. The rumor mill also says you just sent a 2-sentence resignation. The rumor mill is remarkably well-informed. Sophie sat down, studying me with the intensity she usually reserved for correlation matrices. You're going to Alderwave. I'm going to Alderwave. And I pulled out a folder I'd prepared over the weekend. Inside were 2 offer letters on Alderwave letterhead, complete with compensation packages that would make their current salaries look like rounding errors. And I'd like you and Marin to come with me. Sophie's hands shook slightly as she read. This is... Claire. This is double what I make now. It's what you're worth. What you've always been worth. Vincent's going to lose his mind. Vincent's going to lose more than that. Marin appeared in the doorway, looking uncharacteristically flustered. Claire. Richard's on his way down. With Vincent. And legal. I stood, straightening papers that didn't need straightening. Sophie, Marin, you might want to take an early coffee break. Not a chance, Sophie said, settling deeper into her chair. This is better than Netflix. Richard Steinberg entered my office like a man approaching a bomb he wasn't sure was armed. Vincent followed, his usual swagger replaced with something desperate and twitchy. The legal representative, someone I'd never seen before, carried a tablet and the expression of someone who'd rather be anywhere else. Claire, Richard began, his CEO voice in full effect. Let's discuss this resignation. There's nothing to discuss. It's effective immediately. You can't just leave, Vincent interjected. You have projects, responsibilities. All documented and transferred to the shared drive as of this morning, I said. Every model, every analysis, every client file. I'm not sabotaging anything. Vincent, I'm just leaving. This is about Alderwave, Richard said. It wasn't a question. Among other things, they're terminating the contract. His voice was flat. $30 million, gone, because of that presentation. Vincent stepped forward. The presentation was sabotaged. The files were corrupted. Claire had access. I had access to advance your slides. I cut in. Which I did. Successfully. Every one of your 63 slides of feelings and word clouds displayed exactly as you designed them. The legal representative cleared her throat. Ms. Donovan, are you joining a competitor? I'm joining a client, former client, as of this morning. We could pursue non-compete enforcement. My non-compete specifically excludes client companies, I said. I'd reviewed it with my own lawyer over the weekend. Section 4.2, would you like me to pull up the document? Richard's face had gone from red to ashen. Claire, be reasonable, we can work this out. Vincent's new, he's still learning our culture. Your culture? I laughed, and it wasn't a nice sound. Your culture let him call 6 weeks of work fluff in front of my entire team. Your culture made me a slide advancer for my own client relationship. Your culture chose style over substance, and now you're surprised when substance walks out the door? Name your price, Richard said quietly. Whatever Alderwave offered, we'll match it. It's not about money. Then what? I looked at Vincent, who seemed to be shrinking into his expensive suit. It's about working for people who know the difference between PowerPoint and power, between confidence and competence, between talking about transformation and actually transforming something. Sophie stood up. I'm resigning too, effective immediately. Everyone turned to stare at her. What? She said, pulling out her phone. I just sent the email. Marin, you coming? Marin looked between Richard's shocked face and Vincent's crumbling facade. Already sent mine 5 minutes ago. Just wanted to see how this played out. Richard turned back to me, his voice dropping to something almost pleading. Claire, you're taking your entire team? I'm taking the people who actually did the work while Vincent was designing feeling bubbles. The ones who built the models that secured Alderwave in the first place. The ones you let him dismiss as producers of Fluff? This is conspiracy. Vincent sputtered. This is corporate sabotage. This is consequences, I said, gathering my personal items. Not much. Just a photo of my team at last year's Christmas party and, ironically, an award for excellence in strategic analytics that Richard himself had presented 6 months ago. You planned this, Richard said, understanding finally dawning on his face. The whole thing, you knew Vincent would fail. I knew Vincent would be Vincent. I just made sure the right people were watching when he did. I moved toward the door, Sophie and Marin flanking me like an honor guard. Richard stepped aside. Defeated. The legal representative was furiously typing notes. But Vincent, poor Vincent, made one last attempt. You'll regret this, he said. I have connections. I'll make sure everyone knows what you did. I stopped, turned back one last time. What I did? You mean deliver consistent results for 7 years? Build relationships that generated millions in revenue? Create analytical frameworks that actually predicted market movements? Please, Vincent, tell everyone. Tell them exactly what I did. The silence that followed was beautiful. The kind of silence that comes after checkmate, when the king has nowhere left to move. As we waited for the elevator, Sophie nudged me. Think he knows he's about to be fired? Oh, he knows, I said, watching the floor numbers light up in sequence. He's probably already updating his LinkedIn, talking about how he's ready for his next transformational leadership opportunity. How long do you think he'll last? The elevator arrived with a gentle chime. As we stepped in, I thought about Richard's face, about the board meeting he'd have to call, about the $30 million hole in their quarterly projections. Wednesday, I said as the doors closed. Thursday at the latest. I was wrong. Vincent was escorted out Tuesday afternoon, his glass office dismantled by Wednesday morning. But by then, we were already at Alderwave, building something real with people who knew the difference between substance and fluff. And that leather notebook Lydia had given me. Page 1 now had a new entry. The best revenge isn't loud, It's the quiet sound of competent people walking away, leaving the incompetent to explain the silence. Tuesday afternoon. I was settling into my new office at Alderwave, a corner space with actual walls, not Vincent's fishbowl aesthetic, when Lydia knocked and entered without waiting for permission. She was carrying an iPad and wearing the expression of someone watching a particularly satisfying demolition. "Emergency board meeting at North Shore just concluded," she said, settling into one of my chairs. "My friend on their board sent me the highlights. That was fast. $30 million tends to accelerate things." She pulled up what looked like meeting notes. "Want to hear the best part?" "Always." "Vincent tried to blame you for the failed presentation. Said you deliberately withheld critical data. Richard had to explain that you were literally just clicking through Vincent's own slides. Then Vincent claimed you must have tampered with the files beforehand. So Richard pulled up the email trail showing Vincent specifically excluded you from the presentation prep and refused to let you review the content." Sophie, who'd been setting up her workstation in the adjoining office, poked her head in. "Please tell me someone recorded this." "Better," Lydia said. The CFO, Harrison, apparently pulled up Vincent's original employment contract. The one where he guaranteed he could increase client retention by 40% using his revolutionary engagement methodology. 40%? Marin appeared behind Sophie. "Did he even know what our baseline retention was?" 92%, I said. "He was essentially promising to achieve a statistical impossibility." Which Harrison pointed out, Lydia continued, scrolling through her notes. "Using your analysis from last quarter. Actually, the one Vincent called Fluff." We all said in unison. Harrison then presented a fun fact. In the 72 hours since Vincent's presentation, 3 other clients had called to reassess their relationships. Apparently, word travels fast when you show up to a serious business meeting with feeling bubbles. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. But the area code was familiar. I let it go to voicemail. "The killing blow," Lydia said, clearly savoring this, was when Richard asked Vincent to explain his recovery strategy. Vincent pulled up his 120-slide deck. Slide 1 had a typo. Stratgy instead of strategy. The board stopped him at slide 3. "What was slide 3?" Sophie asked. "A SWOT analysis where he listed synergy as both a strength and an opportunity." Even I winced at that one. "They gave him 2 options," Lydia continued. "Resign immediately with 2 weeks severance, or be terminated for cause with nothing." "Let me guess," I said. "He negotiated." "He tried. Asked for 6 months severance and a recommendation letter." Richard apparently laughed. Actually laughed. Told him he should be grateful they weren't pursuing legal action for misrepresentation of capabilities. Another buzz. Same unknown number. This time I answered. "Claire?" The voice was familiar but shaky. "It's Vincent." I put him on speaker, gesturing for everyone to stay quiet. "Vincent, what can I do for you?" I wanted to apologize." The room went still. Even Lydia looked surprised. "I was wrong," he continued. "About your work, about the data, about everything." "Okay. I was wondering. I know this is awkward, but I was hoping you might consider writing me a recommendation. For LinkedIn, just something brief about our time working together." Sophie made a choking sound. Marin covered her mouth. Lydia was typing something on her phone, probably documenting this for posterity. "Vincent," I said carefully, "we worked together for exactly 13 days. "Right. But you saw my leadership style, my vision." "I did see that, yes." "So you'll write something?" I thought about it, about the humiliation in conference room B, about being reduced to a slide advancer, about 6 weeks of work dismissed with a single word. "Vincent, I'll write exactly what I observed. Your complete confidence in your abilities, your unwavering commitment to your vision, your unique approach to data analysis. That's perfect. Thank you. Claire, I knew you'd understand." He hung up. The room exploded. You're not actually going to. Sophie started. Oh, I'll write it, I said, pulling up LinkedIn. Every word will be true. I typed. I worked with Vincent Carr during his brief tenure at North Shore Dynamics. In 13 days, he demonstrated remarkable confidence in his perspectives, regardless of contradicting data. His approach to strategic analysis was certainly unique. I've never seen anything quite like it before or since. His presentation to Alderwave Systems was particularly memorable and had immediate, lasting impact. Vincent's tenure at North Shore will not soon be forgotten. That's brutal, Marin said admiringly. That's accurate, I corrected. Lydia stood to leave, then paused at the door. Oh, one more thing. Richard called me an hour ago, begged me to reconsider the contract termination, offered a 40% discount if we'd come back, and I told him we'd consider it. If he could explain the statistical methodology behind Vincent's feeling bubbles, he hung up. That evening, as Seattle shifted from gray to dark, I sat in my new office reviewing the Alderwave strategic plan, the real one, built on data and analysis and years of relationship building. No word clouds, no gradient backgrounds, no animations of success sprouting from the soil of synergy. My phone had one new voicemail from earlier, the unknown number. I played it. Ms. Donovan, this is Rebecca Chen from TechCrunch. We're running a story about executive failures in the consulting industry. We've heard about a situation at North Shore Dynamics involving a CMO, a major client loss, and what our source called the most devastating corporate takedown they've ever witnessed. Would you care to comment? I deleted the message. The best victories didn't need press releases. Sophie knocked, holding 2 glasses and a bottle of wine that definitely violated Alderwave's workplace policies. Thought we should toast. To Fluff? To Fluff, I agreed, accepting a glass. To Vincent Carr, Marin added, joining us with her own glass she'd procured from somewhere. May he fail upward somewhere very far from here. To Lydia Torres, I countered. Who knows that revenge is a dish best served with data? We drank, and for a moment, I thought about Vincent, probably at home right now, updating his resume, adding successfully transformed organizational dynamics to his accomplishments. He'd land somewhere eventually. His type always did. Some startup would fall for the confidence, the buzzwords, the promise of revolutionary transformation. But not here. Not with our clients. Not with our data. You know what the ironic part is? Sophie said, refilling glasses. His whole fluff comment, he was actually right. There was fluff in that conference room. Yeah, Marin agreed. It just wasn't coming from our PowerPoint. I raised my glass one more time. To silent checkmates, the ones they never see coming. Outside, Seattle glittered in the dark, indifferent to the small dramas playing out in its towers. Somewhere out there, Vincent Carr was learning what happened when you confused confidence with competence, style with substance, noise with knowledge. And somewhere in North Shore's offices, Richard Steinberg was staring at a $30 million hole and wondering how everything had gone so wrong so fast. But here, in this office, with these people, everything was exactly right. We had work to do. Real work. The kind built on analysis and insight and the radical idea that numbers, properly understood, told better stories than any feeling bubble ever could. The king was in checkmate. The game was over. And we hadn't even had to say it out loud. 6 months later, I was reviewing quarterly projections when Lydia walked into my office with 2 cups of coffee and the kind of smile that meant she had news worth sharing. Remember Vincent Carr? She asked, settling into what had become her usual chair. The feelings bubble guy? Hard to forget. He just got hired as Chief Innovation Officer at Meridian Consulting. I nearly spit out my coffee. Meridian? Our competitor Meridian? The very same. Apparently, his LinkedIn recommendation sealed the deal. She pulled up his profile on her phone. Look at this. He's now describing his North Shore experience as successfully pioneered transformation initiatives that led to strategic organizational restructuring. That's certainly one way to describe getting fired in 3 days. Sophie materialized in the doorway. She had an uncanny ability to sense when gossip was happening. Did someone say Vincent got a new job? Chief Innovation Officer, Marin called from her desk. I just looked up the announcement. He's promising to bring disruptive methodologies to their client engagements. We exchanged glances. Meridian had been trying to poach Alderwave's business for 2 years. Should we warn them? Sophie asked. About what? Lydia said innocently. His remarkable confidence, his unique approach to data, his memorable presentations. His immediate and lasting impact, I added. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, contemplating the beautiful inevitability of what was about to unfold at Meridian. You know what's funny? Lydia said, pulling out her old leather notebook, the one with the coffee stains and wisdom. 3 days after you all started here, I got a call from Vincent. This was new. He called you? Oh yes, wanted to explain that the North Shore situation had been a misalignment of visions. Asked if Alderwave might consider engaging him as an independent consultant. Please tell me you recorded it. Better. I asked him to submit a proposal. 47 slides of pure conceptual nothingness. My favorite was his suggested framework for emotional KPI development. What did you do with it? Sent it to Richard Steinberg with a note. This is what $30 million worth of fluff looks like. My phone buzzed. An email from our newest client. A Fortune 500 that had specifically requested the team that actually knew what they were doing at North Shore. Another Vincent-assisted victory. The Q3 numbers are in, I said, pulling up the dashboard. We've exceeded projections by 22%. Using actual math, not feelings. Lydia mock gasped. Shocking, I know. Turns out clients prefer substance. Lydia stood to leave, then paused. There's a rumor that North Shore might go under. They've lost 6 more major accounts since the Alderwave incident. That's unfortunate, I said, meaning it. There were good people there. People who deserved better than the Vincent Carrs of the world. Richard's apparently telling everyone that you orchestrated the whole thing, that you played 4-dimensional chess while everyone else was playing checkers. I thought about that, about the moment Vincent had dismissed my work as fluff, about the quiet decision to let him hang himself with his own rope of buzzwords and bravado. I didn't orchestrate anything, I said. I just stopped preventing the inevitable. The best kind of checkmate, Lydia said. The one where your opponent defeats themselves. Later that afternoon, I found myself in the conference room where we held our client presentations. Real presentations, with real data, with real impact. Sophie and Marin were walking a new client through our predictive modeling system, the one we'd perfected over years of actual work. No gradient backgrounds, no feeling bubbles, no synergy triangles, just truth. Elegantly presented. My phone had one new LinkedIn notification. Vincent had endorsed me for leadership and strategic thinking. I almost laughed. Then I saw he'd also sent a message. Claire, hoping we can connect. I'm building something revolutionary at Meridian. Would love to discuss potential synergies. I archived it without responding. Some messages, like some checkmates, were better left silent. As the Seattle sun set through the conference room windows, painting the city in shades of gold and shadow, I thought about the journey from that humiliating morning in Conference Room B to here. Vincent had taught me something valuable, though not what he'd intended. He taught me that sometimes the best strategy isn't to fight back immediately. Sometimes it's to step aside and let incompetence reveal itself. Sometimes it's to be the silence that follows the noise, the substance that remains after the style fades. My leather notebook, the one Lydia had given me, sat open on my desk. The latest entry was simple. The most devastating checkmates are the ones where every move is legal, every action is ethical, and every consequence is earned. Vincent Carr had called my work fluff. 6 months later, his former company was struggling to survive. His promises had evaporated like morning mist, and he was about to inflict himself on another unsuspecting organization. Meanwhile, We were building something real, something lasting, something that would still be standing long after the feeling bubbles had popped. I closed the notebook and smiled. The game had been over the moment Vincent confused PowerPoint with power. He just hadn't known he was playing. In the end, the best checkmate truly was a silent one. Not because it was quiet, but because it didn't need to announce itself. The pieces simply fell where they were always going to fall, following the immutable laws of cause and effect, competence and consequence. And somewhere across town, in a glass office he'd probably demanded on his first day, Vincent Carr was preparing another presentation about transformation and disruption and innovation, never realizing that the most profound disruption he'd ever cause was to his own career. Checkmate indeed. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're enjoying this tale of corporate revenge. Are you listening during your commute, at home, or maybe even in your own office? Drop a comment below and let's connect. If you enjoyed Claire's silent checkmate, please subscribe to the channel for more stories like this and share your thoughts about your own experiences with workplace politics. Have you ever witnessed a Vincent Carr in your office? Let me know in the comments.